The silence started speaking to me the night the clock stopped. It had been my grandmother's clock, tall, wooden, and proud, a relic that had ticked through every sleepless night of my childhood. Its chime used to strike 12 like a heartbeat through the house, a sound that made the dark seem less empty. But on the day she died, the pendulum froze mid-swing. I remember standing before it after her funeral, staring into the glass face where my reflection looked pale and stretched. My hand hovered near the brass pendulum, but I couldn't bring myself to touch it. The house felt wrong without the ticking, too still, too aware. That night, as I tried to sleep in the old guest room, the silence began pressing against me. You wouldn't think silence could move, but it did. It seeped into the walls, crept beneath the doorframe, and gathered in corners where the shadows deepened. And then I heard it, a whisper, soft, deliberate, rising from downstairs, from beneath the clock. It wasn't a voice exactly. It was the absence of one, like someone trying to speak from inside the silence itself. Come closer. My heart lurched. I told myself it was grief, exhaustion, anything but what it sounded like. Yet something inside me, something I didn't recognize, made me get out of bed and start down the stairs barefoot. The wood groaned under my weight. The air thickened. And by the time I reached the parlor, I saw that the clock's pendulum was moving again, not swinging, but trembling. Then, a sound cracked through the stillness, a sharp click, like a key turning in a lock that hadn't been opened in years. I froze, because I knew, somehow, that the sound hadn't come from the clock, but from behind it. I stood there, half swallowed by shadow, watching that clock tremble like it was shivering with a secret. The click had been faint, but unmistakable, metal against metal, the sound of something old remembering how to open. I leaned closer. The silence thickened, pressing at my ears until I could hear my own pulse echoing in my head. "Grandma?" I whispered, though I didn't expect an answer. And then, very softly, the silence answered back. "Not anymore." The voice came from behind the clock, from the wall itself. I stumbled back, hitting the edge of the parlor table. A photo frame toppled, glass cracking in two. The air turned cold enough to sting my throat. The grandfather clock groaned, wood expanding as though it were breathing. Its brass pendulum began to swing in slow, uneven arcs, each one accompanied by a sound like a heartbeat made of dust. Tick. Tick. Except it wasn't ticking, not really. It was mimicking the sound, almost like something inside was trying to remember how to be a clock. I told myself to leave. I even turned toward the stairs. But before I could move, the pendulum stopped mid-swing again, and the whisper came once more, closer now, curling against my ear as if it had stepped out of the wall entirely. "Don't go," it said. "You haven't heard what I took yet." My mouth went dry. What you took. And then, from the hollow behind the clock, I heard a muffled knocking. Once. Twice. 3 times. And a small, trembling voice answered from within. "Please let me out." The voice was so faint I almost convinced myself it was imagination, a trick of the wind, or the settling house. But no, it pleaded again. "Please let me out." I felt my stomach twist. That tone, desperate, childlike. It didn't belong in my grandmother's parlor. I reached for the side of the clock. The oak was cold and slightly damp beneath my fingers. I tugged gently, expecting resistance, but the entire frame shuddered forward an inch, scraping the floorboards. Dust spiraled up in thick motes. Behind it, a thin line split the wall, almost invisible, like a door sealed long ago. My heart hammered. I pressed my ear to it. The silence pulsed. I could hear breathing, shallow, uneven, too close. Then came a whisper that wasn't the same as before. This one was afraid. "He's still here." I staggered back, hand over my mouth. "Who's here?" I whispered. But the silence had changed again, heavier, denser. And just as I realized I could no longer hear the house around me, no ticking, no wind, no distant hum of night, I saw something move in the reflection of the clock's glass. Not behind me, inside it. A shape, dark, faceless, pressing against the inside of the clock's glass like someone trying to claw their way out from behind time itself. The pendulum began to sway again, violently now, slamming against the case with a hollow thunk, thunk, thunk. I stumbled backward. Then the whisper, the first one, cold and low, slipped out from the base of the clock, curling around my ankles like fog. I took her voice, it murmured. But I can give it back if you let me in. The glass cracked, and through the split, I saw an eye staring back at me that I should have run. Every instinct in me screamed go now, but my feet had turned to roots. The eye didn't blink. It shimmered like wet ink, rippling against the glass as if the clock face were a thin layer of water holding it back. Its gaze felt heavy, not like being watched, but like being weighed. Then came the whisper again, so close I could feel it vibrate through my teeth. Let me in. The air bent around those words. The parlor grew smaller, the corners deepened into pits of shadow. I tried to back away, but something cold brushed my wrist. It was the clock's minute hand. It had slipped free of the dial and was pointing at me. I yanked my arm back, heart drumming against my ribs. The brass hand clattered to the floor, but the moment it hit the wood, it screeched like metal dragged across stone. The sound filled the house, long and shrill, shaking the pictures from the walls. Then, silence again. Except for breathing. Not mine. Slow. Behind me, I turned. Nothing. Only the open doorway leading to the hall. But something moved there, a shimmer, like heat above asphalt. The whisper returned, softer this time, almost tender. She waited here. So long. Beneath the tick that died. And I realized what the trembling voice behind the wall had said. He's still here. He was standing behind me. I didn't need to see him to know. The air around me thinned, cold seeping into my lungs. The faintest outline appeared in the reflection of the cracked glass, tall, wrong, head tilted at an impossible angle. Then the clock began ticking again. Backward. Asterisk talk, tick, tock, tick, asterisk. Each reversed tick drew the figure closer in the reflection. And then, a whisper in my own voice said from behind my ear, "Time's been waiting for you." The sound of that backward ticking pulled at me like undertow. Each tock-tick felt heavier, slower, as if gravity itself had turned the wrong way around. I couldn't look away from the clock's cracked glass. The figure behind me blurred and flickered, there 1 second, gone the next, like a shadow caught between heartbeats. Then a snap. The wood at the back of the clock split clean down the middle. A thin seam of black opened in the wall behind it. It wasn't an empty space. It was breathing. A low, rhythmic inhale echoed from inside, deep and wet, and with every breath the gap widened. The scent of cold earth rolled out, sharp as metal and moss. The trembling child voice whispered again, weak and near tears. "Don't let it open. Please don't." Too late. The seam tore wider with a sighing crack, revealing steps descending into the dark. And on the first step lay something small and pale. A hand. Just a hand. Its fingers twitched once, then curled, as though beckoning. I stumbled backward into the parlor table, candles toppling and sputtering out. Darkness rushed in like water through a broken dam. Only the faint glow from the clock's cracked face lit the stairwell now. The voice that wasn't human spoke again, low and steady. "You heard her," she called. "You came." Something shifted inside the wall, dragging footsteps, slow, deliberate. I reached for the doorknob of the front door, but my fingers brushed air. The door wasn't there anymore. Just smooth, cold wall where wood should have been. The house was sealing itself. And from the stairwell, the dragging steps stopped. A whisper. Not from the darkness below, but from the floor beneath my feet. Time can't keep her buried forever. The floorboards trembled. Then a single nail sprang loose and rolled toward the clock, clinking softly, like a countdown beginning. The nail stopped rolling at the edge of the clock and spun in place, slow as a coin that never quite fell flat. I don't know why I bent to pick it up. Curiosity, maybe, or the sense that I had to keep it from finishing whatever strange count it had started. The instant my fingers touched the cold metal, the air pulled inward, like a house drawing breath. The dark behind the clock pulsed once, then again, inviting. I told myself I would only look. I could almost hear my grandmother's voice in the back of my head. You mustn't follow the sound of stillness, dear. It doesn't end where you think it will. But the stairs were there, impossible, and waiting. I stepped down. The first thing that struck me was how wrong the space felt. The steps were wooden, but the air smelled of rain on stone. Each time my foot touched a tread, the one above it vanished into blackness, sealing me further in. Halfway down, I heard the clock above me start to tick again. Only this time it wasn't ticking backward or forward.
It was spelling something.
Let her out. The voice of the child whimpered somewhere below. He doesn't want you to see. I reached the bottom and found myself in a narrow corridor lined with clocks. Dozens, maybe hundreds, each one shattered or melted in some impossible way, their faces sagging like wax. Their hands all pointed at different times, but every one of them stopped just before midnight. Something dripped steadily in the dark. I lifted the tiny candle I'd taken from the parlor and saw a trail of small, sooty footprints leading down the corridor. They were heading away from me, and then I realized they weren't footprints at all. They were impressions left in ash. The last of the candle flame fluttered. Just before it went out, I saw that the walls weren't made of wood or plaster. They were made of door frames, each one sealed shut, each one whispering faintly with voices that begged not to be opened. Then something behind one of them knocked, once gently, and whispered my name. The sound of my name whispered through the corridor again, softer this time, almost shy. Elena. That's my name. Or, at least it was. Every door along the wall seemed to breathe in unison when the voice spoke it, hinges groaning like lungs inflating. I took a single step closer. The air thickened, heavy with the smell of candle smoke and dust. The door that had spoken my name stood out, not because it was different, but because it was trying not to be. Its wood was the same aged oak, its brass knob the same dull gleam, but it trembled faintly, as though pretending to be still. I raised my candle stub. Wax dripped over my fingers. Who's there? I whispered. Silence. Then 3 slow knocks from the other side.
1, 2,
3. Each one echoed inside my chest like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. Do you want her voice back? The same low whisper from the clock asked, except now it came from every door at once. They all spoke in harmony, tones warping, overlapping. She's still waiting. Behind the hour that stopped. My candle flickered, then flared bright, as if the flame had taken a breath of fear. In that brief light, I saw writing carved deep into the door that called to me. Grandmother, 11:59. My throat went dry. Let me see you, I said, voice shaking. The knob turned on its own.
Slowly, click by click.
The door creaked open, only an inch, and warm air rolled out, thick with the scent of lavender and rot. Through the gap, I saw movement. Not my grandmother, but a silhouette hunched and trembling, its head bowed. And from somewhere deep behind it, the voice of a little girl cried out, louder this time. He's wearing her face. Then the candle went out. For a moment there was nothing. Just the smell of lavender gone sour and the dark humming of clocks that weren't ticking. Then, somewhere close, I heard the faint creak of a neck turning too far. The light came back not as flame, but as a soft, blue glow that leaked from the open door, enough to paint the outline of the figure crouched inside. It moved like someone remembering how to stand. The head lifted, slowly, and I saw my grandmother's hair, silver and familiar. My chest tightened. Grandma? The figure stepped closer. The glow brightened, catching her face, and that's when I understood what the child had meant. It was her face, but it didn't belong to her. The skin hung loose at the edges, as if it had been draped over something that didn't quite fit. The mouth smiled too wide, the eyes glassy and hollow, and beneath the thin skin of the neck something black pulsed and shifted. When she spoke, it wasn't her voice at all. It was a chorus of every clock in the corridor, whispering in time. You took her silence. Now she wants yours. The walls shuddered. Doors rattled. Every carved name began to whisper, low and pleading. I stumbled backward, Tripping over the nail I still clutched. It bit into my palm, and a thin drop of blood fell onto the floorboards. The moment it touched, the corridor stopped breathing. My grandmother's borrowed face tilted to the side. The smile cracked, literally splitting from ear to ear. From the open wound beneath, something black and glistening began to crawl out, pulling itself free of her skin like a shadow shedding its disguise. It whispered in my grandmother's soft tone, but the words were wrong, twisted. "Come down, Elena. The second hand is hungry." Then every clock on the wall began to tick again, all at once, all backward. Tock tick tock tick. And the doors began to open, the corridor filled with sound. Not noise, sound made of time itself, clawing backward through air that no longer belonged to now. Each door opened wider, spilling faint light that twisted like smoke. Behind every threshold I caught flashes, scenes from before. My grandmother at her sewing table, the parlor in sunlight, myself as a child playing beneath that still ticking clock. Each image stuttered, reversed, replayed, then tore apart like burnt paper. The figure that had worn my grandmother's face stood motionless, the black thing within her body still peeling itself free, strand by strand. With every backward tick, it became less human. I turned to run, but the corridor had lengthened. It stretched impossibly far, swallowing its own end, the doors multiplying like reflections in mirrors facing each other. Something tugged at my wrist. The nail in my palm had sunk deeper, metal growing hot, dragging my hand toward the door marked Grandmother, 1159. The child's voice, closer now, screamed, "Don't let it touch you when it strikes 12. But 12 was coming. I could feel it. The ticking grew frantic, desperate, the walls trembling as if the house itself were fighting not to reach the hour. Then,
Tock.
The light in the corridor went white. For a breath, the clocks were silent again. And I was standing not underground, but in the old parlor. Everything perfectly still. Everything normal. The clock on the wall showed 11:59. Only now, the hands were turning by themselves. And on the reflection of its glass, I saw someone standing behind me.
Me.
She smiled and whispered, "Now you'll listen." Then the hands of the clock struck 12, both pointing straight down. And the silence screamed. There was no chime. No sound at all. Just a single shiver through the floorboards, like the whole house had exhaled in relief. Then the silence spoke. It wasn't a whisper anymore. It was a weight, pressing down from the ceiling, pouring into my ears until I could taste it. I clutched at my head, but the silence slid straight through my fingers, cold and thick as fog. And beneath that soundless pressure, I heard the echo of the scream that hadn't been allowed to exist. It came from the reflection.
From me.
The other me in the glass didn't move the way I did. She was still smiling, her head tilted like a curious child's. The eyes in her face were all wrong. Too bright, too steady. I reached out toward the glass.
So, did she?
Our fingertips touched on opposite sides of the clock's surface. A ripple spread through the glass like water disturbed, and suddenly the parlor flickered. I saw it for a heartbeat, then another version of it, older, darker, layered beneath the first. Furniture out of place, shadows standing where no one should be. And everywhere I looked, time split. 11:59 and 12 o'clock existed at once. In one, the clock was whole. In the other, it hung open like a wound, its gears glistening and breathing. The reflection spoke first. Time tried to keep her quiet, but she left the door open for you. She pointed toward the hallway, where a faint golden light was pulsing, like a heartbeat trying to find its rhythm again. I didn't want to go. Every nerve in my body screamed, "Don't follow it." But I could feel something moving behind the reflection now, rising up, stretching its arms through time. The ticking resumed, slow and deliberate.
Tick. Tock.
Only now it wasn't marking seconds. It was counting me. The glow pulsed from the far end of the hallway, faint as a candle in fog. With every beat, the air seemed to bend around it. Walls thinning, floorboards flexing like the ribs of something breathing just beneath the wood. I took a step. The soundless weight that had crushed the parlor lifted enough for me to move, though each motion felt like I was pushing through water. Behind me, the reflection still hung in the clock glass. I didn't dare look back, but I heard her voice ride the next pulse of light. "Don't stop until you see the heart." So I walked. The hallway narrowed with every few feet. The pictures on the walls changed. First the faces of family I knew, then strangers, then faces blurred entirely into gray. The heartbeat grew louder, turning steady, almost mechanical. When I reached the end, the golden light wasn't light at all. It was a door, a perfect oval of brightness hovering an inch off the floor, framed by the shadow of a clock face. In its center hung a single pendulum, swinging slowly, glowing like molten brass. And nailed to the pendulum, arms outstretched, was my grandmother. Her eyes were closed, lips moving soundlessly. Each time the pendulum swung left, her mouth shaped one word: stay. Each swing right. Go. The golden light dimmed with every motion. I reached out, trembling. My fingers brushed her sleeve, soft, familiar, and for an instant, everything stopped. The heartbeat, the air, even the ache of fear. Then her eyes snapped open. They were black, depthless. "Elena," she whispered, "you shouldn't have followed him down." Before I could answer, the pendulum jerked backward with impossible force, slamming her and me through the golden door. The light shattered, and I was falling. Not through space, but through hours. Falling didn't feel like motion, it felt like being unwritten. The air was thick with whispering clocks, each one mouthing seconds that no longer existed. My body stretched and folded, faces from every moment I'd ever lived flickering past me like cards shuffled by invisible hands. When I hit the ground, there was no impact, only stillness. I opened my eyes to find myself standing in the same parlor again, yet not quite. Everything was bathed in dull sepia light, as if the world were a photograph that had been left too long in the sun. The clock stood before me, whole and new, pendulum swinging perfectly. And sitting beside it in her rocking chair, needle poised mid-stitch, was my grandmother.
Alive.
"Did you fix it, dear?" she asked gently, without looking up. My throat tightened. "Grandma?" She smiled. "Such a good girl. Always listening for the silence." The sound of the rocking chair slowed. I noticed her shadow wasn't rocking with her. It stood still, head tilted toward me. Its mouth was open. Then I saw the thread in her hand wasn't thread at all. It was hair. My hair. I backed away. "This isn't real." Her eyes flicked up, warm brown for only a moment before turning that same bottomless black. "Oh, it's real enough. This is where all the minutes go when they're forgotten." She rose from the chair. The shadow behind her moved first, peeling away from her body, crawling along the wall until it towered above the ceiling. The ticking of the clock deepened, slower now, almost human. Each swing of the pendulum made the room pulse like a heartbeat. And I realized with a cold certainty what the golden heartbeat had been all along. It wasn't a door. It was a trap. The shadow leaned close, whispering in a voice that sounded like mine and hers combined. "You've crossed into the hour that eats its children." Then the clock hands began turning again, not forward, not backward, but in circles, spinning faster and faster until the room began to twist around me. The room wound itself tighter and tighter until the walls were a blur of sepia and shadow. The air turned syrup thick. Each breath came out tasting like old dust and brass. Then the motion stopped. I stood at the center of what used to be the parlor, except now it was round, no corners, no ceiling, no floor I could name. Just a slow-turning sphere of clock faces, all layered one atop the other. Their hands were spinning in every direction, grinding against each other, shedding sparks that drifted through the dark like dying fireflies. And in the middle, hung between the gears, was her. Not my grandmother. Not the shadow. Not even quite me. It was something that looked like all three of us at once. The faces kept shifting, smile, grimace, blank stare, changing with every flash of light. When it spoke, the voices overlapped, mine, hers, and dozens more, stretching back through time. You wanted to know what the silence was saying. I nodded before I could stop myself. It's what's left when the hour runs out, it said. The echo that refuses to die. The sphere of clocks began to spin again, slowly at first, then faster, until the voices merged into one long, low note. The sound made the space ripple like a pond struck by rain. Every tick you've ever heard, Elena, was me calling. You listened. So now. The figure reached out a hand, thin as bone and bright with shifting light. You keep the time. The moment its fingers brushed my forehead, the clocks all stopped. The silence roared. And I felt something move inside my chest, something metallic, heavy, starting to swing. A pendulum. I looked down. A faint light pulsed beneath my ribs, keeping rhythm. Somewhere far above, the house, the real house, creaked. The old grandfather clock began to tick once more.
Talk.
Tick, the pulse in my chest beat steady, mechanical. I could feel the pendulum swinging inside me. Left, right, a rhythm that no longer waited for my heart to keep time. The sphere of clocks had stopped spinning. Their faces were all turned toward me now, hundreds of eyes made of glass and brass, watching to see what I'd do next. I whispered, I want to go home. The silence answered with a voice that wasn't cruel, only final. There is no home beyond the hour that owns you. I took a step backward, and the world folded. Each motion made the clocks behind me collapse, folding in like paper burned by invisible fire. The figure that had spoken to me, the one with all our faces, tilted its head. You can go back, it said, but you won't go alone. Before I could speak, something unlatched in my chest, a metallic click like the opening of an old lock. The light from my ribs spilled outward, blinding. When it dimmed, I was back in the parlor. The clock stood still again, hands frozen at 12. Morning light streamed through the curtains. Dust drifted in calm air. Everything seemed normal, except for the quiet. Not the same silence as before. This one listened. It pulsed faintly, waiting for me to breathe, then breathed with me. I looked down at my reflection in the clock's glass. My eyes gleamed faintly, gold at the center, ticking. And behind me, in that reflection, the shape of my grandmother stood once more. She smiled gently. The clock's wound now, darling. Don't let it stop. I turned to face her, but there was no one there. Only the old clock.
Tick. Tock.
The pendulum began to move. And with each swing, I felt something deep in the walls start to whisper. Not words, but a slow, rhythmic counting. Counting up, the counting grew louder. Each pulse climbed one number higher, though it wasn't spoken aloud. It beat inside my bones.
1, 2,
3. Every window in the parlor fogged from the inside. The morning light turned the color of old honey, thick and wavering. Dust rose from the floor as if the house were breathing again. I went to the clock. The pendulum was steady, but the brass gleamed wet, as if something had been freshly poured into it. My own reflection swayed with the pendulum's motion. My face blurred and steadied, until the eyes looking back were no longer mine.
4.
The whispers under the floorboards joined in, dozens of soft voices speaking together, a lullaby of all the people who had ever lived inside this house. The sound was almost kind, almost gentle. 5. I pressed my hand to the glass. The ticking slowed under my palm. The air cooled, thickened. My grandmother's voice came from somewhere close, perhaps from behind the clock, perhaps from inside my own head. Now you know, Elena. The silence was never empty. It was waiting for someone to keep it. The final number rose in me, a note instead of a word. The pendulum stopped mid-swing. The hands pointed neither to 12 nor any hour at all. They hovered between moments. I could have stepped back then. I could have let the clock rest. But I whispered, I'll listen. And the silence, grateful at last, breathed in. Every clock in the corridor answered, ticking once in perfect unison. The sound traveled up the walls, through the roof, into the still air beyond the house. Then nothing. Only stillness. If you ever find yourself in a quiet room with an old clock that refuses to tick, listen carefully. If the silence feels alive, If it seems to hold its breath, don't speak to it, because it's already speaking your name.